All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we are here today with a Dan Quinn themed 7-round 2024 NFL mock draft. I'm super excited because we do mock drafts and we've already done several. I'm probably going to do several more with different themes. I'm not just doing them for no reason. There's like a trade up theme, there's a trade back theme. What if we do this type of theme? I'm really excited about this Dan Quinn thing because, first of all, I planned on doing this before the press conference. I'm glad I waited because it did influence my decisions a little bit. But the reason for this Dan Quinn themed mock draft, and we're going to do a Cliff Kingsbury one soon, probably like next week or something like that, maybe in a week or two, week and a half. But the point of this mock draft is that we're trying to get players that he would love to deploy in his scheme, especially defensively, but also based on what he said in that press conference yesterday, what he wants and what he's looking for in offensive players as well, as far as explosion, game changes, guys that make splash plays to get energy out of everybody, to add momentum to the team. They feed off that fuel and that energy, and everybody else plays better because of that play that guy made, on whether it be offense or defense. And of course, with these mock drafts, we're being realistic. I know Dan Quinn is a defensive guy, but we're not going to just only draft defensive players. There's still going to be a lot of offensive players in here, but especially with Dan Quinn's side of things, the system that he ran for the Cowboys is different from what he ran with the Seahawks. Now, he said in his press conference that he would like to do what he did with the Cowboys here for the Commanders, but like the Seahawks, he ran more of like a cover 3 zone coverage scheme. He went to the Cowboys, and because of the personnel that he had there, he was able to play a lot more man. He was able to get to the quarterback a little bit better, especially with a guy like Micah Parsons and all of those guys. So he was able to run more of like a cover 2 man coverage scheme that was able to take more risk, and that's why him and Joe Witt Jr. as a combination, as two defensive minds, were able to lead the NFL in takeaways over the last 3 years. He wants to do something very similar to that for the Washington Commanders, but if you look at our current roster, do we even have the guys that's ready to deploy that type of defense? So in this mock draft, we're going to have to handle some things on offense, but we're especially going to have to handle some things on defense so that we can run that exact same defense that he was running for the Cowboys, and so that we can go from one of the worst takeaway defense in the NFL to one of the best. So that's the point of this whole thing. Also, of course, this is going to share Dan Quinn's vision and his scheme, but also the goal is to go from number 2 overall pick to division winner, winning a playoff game in one offseason just like the Texans did. What is our best way of doing that as well? But before we dive into this mock draft, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned with everything I got coming from the channel. Again, we're working on a Cliff Kingsbury mock draft as well. It's going to be super focused on what would be his ideal mock draft with his air raid system that he's bringing. And we're going to mention the air raid system in here a little bit. We're going to have some matches for Cliff Kingsbury in here, but we're just leaning a little bit more to the defense and that side of things because of Dan Quinn. But that one's going to be leaning way more to offense. We're still going to draft defensive players because, again, it's a realistic 7-round mock draft. This is not just Dan Quinn draft all defensive players with all of the picks that we have. Cliff Kingsbury draft all offensive players. But you get what I'm trying to say. Also, been a lookout for a lot of content because anything Commanders coming out, small or big, I'm working on a video for those things. And then I'm also working on a full film session, hour-long breakdown of Cliff Kingsbury's air raid system. I've already done 2 video breakdowns explaining the strengths and weaknesses, but I want to do a video literally showing you all 22 clips, like Arizona Cardinals tape, showing you what I mean, and then comparing it to what we currently have for the Washington Commanders. Oh, Terry McLaurin could run this route that this player ran for the Cardinals, and then this quarterback, potentially like a Jayden show some LSU clips, could make this throw or have this play that Kyler Murray just made for the Arizona Cardinals. It's going to be like a parallel like that, and then basically showing how we can succeed with Cliff Kingsbury as our offensive coordinator. All that type of. Make sure you stay tuned for all of that. But before we even get ahead of ourselves and get into all of that type of stuff, let's go ahead and get to this video. Let's get it. And again, like I always say, with the disclaimer, I'm going into these mock drafts assuming that we did some things in free agency, because that's how this works, man. It's not just a mock draft in a vacuum. We are going to have to address some things in free agency, and I want to do a whole video breakdown on that as well. And I'm basically going to talk about why it's best to attack defense in free agency and it's best to attack offense in the draft. Now, you're going to do a mix of both. For each, you know, you're going to get some offense, you're going to get some defense in free agency, you're going to get some offense, some defense in the draft as well. But I think just based on supply and demand, not only what our biggest needs are, but more so focused on what's just available. This is the type of draft where you really attack offense, and this is the type of free agency where you go whatever you need. Well, we need edge rusher, secondary, linebacker. The free agency got you on that, but they don't necessarily have you when it comes to like offensive line and things like that. So just based on what the supply is, we're gonna have to go free agency heavy defense and draft heavy offense. Just naturally, I'm already gonna go ahead and give you the heads up on that right now. I'm gonna do a full video breakdown, breaking down exactly why and all of that type of stuff, give you examples. But just know, going into this mock draft, we addressed edge and free agency. Like I've said in all of my previous mock drafts, we went and got like a Brian Burns and or a Josh Allen at edge. And then from there, we'll see what else. But just know, assume with this mock draft and a lot of my mock drafts, we went and handled edge rusher at the very least by signing one of those top guys in free agency. And then here comes the mock draft. So, without further ado, round 1, second pick overall, I have us taking quarterback Jayden Daniels from LSU. And I've already done a full breakdown as to why Caleb Williams is, of course, the better, more ideal fit for the Cliff Kingsbury air raid system. Even just beyond the fact that Cliff Kingsbury was literally the senior offensive assistant to Caleb Williams just this last year. They were at USC together. So that would be amazing to see them go from USC to the Washington Commanders together, like at the same time. But Jayden Daniels is the next best thing you can get, especially with me expecting that the Bears will take Caleb Williams first overall. And Cliff Kingsbury, I know for a fact, would be ecstatic to have a chance at a guy like Jayden Daniels. I feel like you just really can't even miss, especially between those two. So actually, in my very first mock draft simulator that I did immediately after we hired Dan Quinn, Drake May actually went first for some crazy reason with Pro Football Focus, and I could actually see a scenario where that could happen. The Bears could talk themselves into believing in the prototypical build of a Drake May, the traits, and again, like I've explained in the previous video, Drake May could run this offense. I mean, Drake May and Sam Howell literally ran an air raid system at UNC. So that would be a pretty seamless transition for him as well. I feel like Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams could do a better job of maximizing that system, especially with their better mobility, their better deep ball ability, and more consistent accuracy and things like that. But Drake May could kill in this system as well. I think you honestly, between the top 3 quarterbacks, couldn't miss. But either way, for some reason, in the mock draft, Drake May went first. Again, for reasons I've already explained, I can see that happening. So then Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels were both available at this pick for me. But I'm just going to be as realistic as possible. Even though this is a best case scenario, we're going to go with Jayden Daniels with this pick, because I'm not even going to get myself too just excited about the chances of that actually happening and Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels both being available for us number 2 overall. So I decided to play it safe, just went ahead and took Jayden Daniels, even though I do prefer Caleb Williams. But Jayden Daniels is fine. Let's not play around and act like he's not. Plain and simple. I already did a full over 30-minute breakdown of his weaknesses and strengths in a whole separate video. So I want to take more time to look at this from the angle of why Jayden Daniels fits what the Commanders are building, especially from Dan Quinn's perspective. He mentioned explosive plays multiple times in his press conference, and Jayden Daniels produced the most explosive plays in the nation last year, and it was by a lot. And why would Jayden Daniels be a perfect fit for that and a great fit for Cliff Kingsbury's system? Let's go ahead and get to it. Well, I've already done, again, a super detailed breakdown of Jayden Daniels' strengths and weaknesses from my video last week after he was mocked to us. So if you want to go check that out, you can. And to get the bad out of the way, probably the aspect of Jayden Daniels' game, from his current game and traits, just based on what we've seen from film, I want to emphasize current, because he can always improve. But the part of Jayden Daniels' current traits from what we see from his tape in college at LSU is that he does not throw on the run enough, nearly enough at all. And of course he does at times. I'm not saying that he doesn't do it at all. I want to emphasize that as well. But it does scare me how low of a rate he actually does it. And he's just the type of guy that once he's forced to use his legs even just a little, he's taking off with his legs the whole way. and he's not looking up to throw the ball while on the run. I mean, take a look at the passing attempt percentage when moved off the spot from 2023. And best way to break this down is that when you're off the spot, that means anytime that you just drop back in a normal setting and you're forced to have to move because of pressure, you escape the pocket, or even if you're within the pocket, you move a dramatic enough amount of space to where it's not just simply hike, drop back, throw the ball. If you're forced to move, shift any way to account for any pressure, the offensive line breaking down, if you have to escape the pocket, whatever, and then off of that, how many times do you actually attempt to pass versus just completely running with the ball? Michael Penix Jr., 71%. That's pretty good. Caleb Williams, 65%. So again, when Caleb Williams is forced to move off his spot, he throws the ball 65%, runs it 35%. Just to basically break that down again. Bo Nix, 65% as well. JJ McCarthy, 52%. Drake May, 48%. Jayden Daniels is at 20%, y'all. The lowest in the FBS. And for reference, the NFL high is 74%. The average is 57%. And the lowest in the NFL is 38%. Again, Jayden Daniels was 20%. And that's scary, man. I'm not gonna lie. That does frighten me. But when he does throw off schedule, he's still less efficient than he normally is, because his overall completion percentage in 2023 was 72.2%. He completed 72.2% of his passes. But when he was working off schedule and was forced to leave his original spot, he was 50%, which is still not like terrible, but it's worse than who he is from the pocket, which is kind of hard to believe with a guy that can run that well. Jayden Daniels was 9 of 18, 229 yards and 2 touchdowns when he had to throw off of his spot. But no interceptions is pretty noteworthy in a positive way, though, because Penix, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, McCarthy, and Drake May all had at least one interception when throwing after being forced to move from his original spot, basically having to make an off-schedule throw. Jayden Daniels is the only one that doesn't, but at the same time, he had way less attempts than everybody. But I do think it also is noteworthy in a positive way that even though he has like way less than half the attempts of throwing off-schedule than all of those other quarterbacks compared to those guys, he also has more than half their yards. So it's like when he does finally throw off schedule and then he actually does complete the pass off schedule, it's explosive. 228 yards off of 9 completions from that exact scenario is actually really crazy. There's definitely some untapped potential there, but it's still a concern that needs to be coached up. I want to go ahead and get that out the way. And before we move on, it's hard not to notice that Caleb Williams was forced to throw off his original spot in the pocket way more than any other draftable quarterback. I mean, his offensive line, poor guy. But moving on to the positive side of Jayden Daniels and why he could definitely kill it in this offense, this Cliff Kingsbury offense. And again, everything else was very coachable. We can work on that. But he has a lot of elite traits that can help him excel in this air raid system. First of all, mobility is huge. Kyler Murray was able to get off so many 20-yard plus runs, not only because he's a great runner with the football in his hands, but also because defenses are so afraid of getting beat deep by this system. That's literally what this system lives on: attacking the field, deep down the field, horizontally, vertically, everywhere, just spreading defenses out. It's exhausted mentally and physically to go against a defense, an offense like this. And so Kyler Murray, or whatever quarterback we end up having that's going to be our starting quarterback going into the 2024 season, will have plenty of opportunities to see light boxes and to take advantage of those light boxes. Defense is worried about getting beat deep, and you can just take off and run if you need to and get a nice little chunk play if they're so worried about not getting beat deep, which will happen a lot. And Jayden Daniels is a guy that can run. He ran for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He has it in him. He may not be Lamar Jackson fast, but he's going to be one of the closest people to it when he gets drafted. That's why I don't really like comparing him to Lamar Jackson. I did a full breakdown as to why in my Jayden Daniels video breakdown like about a week ago. He's not really Lamar Jackson, but that doesn't also mean that he's not one of the closest things to Lamar Jackson when he gets to the NFL. But I want to emphasize that he's not necessarily close, especially when it comes to speed. But either way, when it comes to ripping off big yards, big chunk runs, I think Jayden Daniels will be perfect. But the problem is, going back to his weaknesses, you gotta avoid getting hit, man. You gotta learn how to slide. That extra 3 yards that you're gonna get from fighting and getting hit as bad as he was getting hit at LSU, man, you gotta stop that. It's not worth it. Just go ahead and get your 8, 12 yards and slide rather than getting your 8 to 12 yards and then fighting for 15. Not worth it, man. It's really not. So we got to work on that. That's coachable as well, though. But secondly, another big advantage that Jayden Daniels has is his arm strength, bro. Big time arm strength, and not even just arm strength, but deep ball accuracy, man. And that's a necessity to have that in the air raid system, especially Cliff Kingsbury's, man. You got to have plenty of that. And out of all of the draftable quarterbacks, you would have an easy argument to say that Jayden Daniels was the best deep ball thrower, even more so than a Caleb Williams, because Jayden Daniels on 20+ yard throws this past season, he had a 99.2 grade, 63.6 completion percentage, which was 35 out of 55, and the next closest quarterback was at a 54 completion percentage. So not only is Jayden Daniels the best deep ball thrower in this draft, but you can also argue that it may not even be close with him and the guy that's in second place. That alone would make Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury sprint to the podium to get him. I'm letting you know that right now. Then round 2, 36th overall, I was taking offensive tackle Troy Fautanu from Washington again, and it just makes too much sense. Now, let me go ahead and let you know now. Amarius Mims, especially after the combine, there's no way he's going to be available in the second round. There's just no way in life. He has the highest ceiling I've seen of any tackle in the past few years to enter the NFL draft. So Troy Fautanu is our only hope of getting a top tackle in the second round of the pick, with our second pick of our draft. And I honestly think that we may even do what we have to do to trade back up into the first round to get a guy like Troy Fautanu, because he's that good. It's that serious. And like I've addressed in previous videos, any tackle worth taking at all, if he's worth anything, usually is not going to be available in the second round just due to positional value. There's no way that you could draft a quarterback number 2 overall and then sit where we are in the second round and be able to get a guy as good as Troy Fautanu. And then with Charles Leno and Andrew Wiley, yeah, they were all right last year, but I really want better than all right, especially for our second overall pick quarterback that we're more than likely going to end up taking. Our franchise quarterback, we got to protect that guy better. And like I've already addressed in my Cliff Kingsbury air raid system breakdowns, that system it demands a good to great offensive line. You can't have an alright offensive line. They not only have to be very athletic, but they also just have to be flat out great for this offense to even be functional, to stay on schedule. So we got to emphasize offensive line. Maybe another system can hide the weakness of your offensive line, hide the fact that they're not that great. This one's going to expose that, if anything. So we got to go offensive line heavy, not only in this draft, but also in free agency. You got to do what you got to do to improve it. So a guy like Troy Fautanu, honestly, you may need to trade back up into the first round to get him. But now let's talk about Troy himself. And I've already broken him down in another mock draft. So long story short, I think he's very underrated. I think if a team even took him in the top 15 of the draft, they would be happy and not look back, not have any regret at all. But there's just Olu Fashanu, there's Joe Alt, there's Amarius Mims that's going to push him down the draft. And a lot of people actually even prefer J.C. Latham. Some guys are J.C. Latham guys that feel like he's the best tackle in the draft from what I've seen. But I love Troy's mean streak a lot, man. He gets out of control at times, but I much more prefer the player to learn how to control their over-aggression and tone it down a little than to try to teach somebody with no aggression how to be aggressive any day of the week. So give me that guy any way, any day of the week, man. I prefer to teach a guy to tone it down than to try to create it. Way easier. And then he's also very athletic, which is, again, necessary in the air raid system that we're about to run. And this system will prioritize pass protection over run protection. And so that allows us that if you had to skip any corners, if you had to cut any corners, if you had to skip any steps, if you had to man, we can't get everything on our wish list. Where are some things that we could kind of maybe avoid is maybe run blocking. Because even with this system, even as much as Cliff Kingsbury likes to run the ball, it's going to be very pass heavy. And when we do run the ball, it's going to be out of shotgun a lot anyways. So offensive linemen are going to be trying to pass protect in general first of all, just to confuse the defense, but also it's going to be a lot of read options. So they're going to be pass protecting just in case that the quarterback does keep it and pass the ball. And then we just run out of shotgun from there. So this is going to emphasize pass protection, hide a lack of run protection. And Troy Fautanu, his strongest and most consistent part of his game is his pass protection. So he would be ecstatic to come to a Cliff Kingsbury air raid system because it would literally bring out all of his strengths and pretty much hide some of the weaknesses that he has. So he would be happy and we would be more than happy to have him. Again, you probably got to trade up back into the late first round, mid first round to get him though, just to not even take a chance. And then we have another round 2 pick, 40th overall, cornerback DJ James from Alabama. From Auburn. Ooh, my fault, man. I'm sorry, Auburn fans. I'm sorry, Alabama fans, to even get y'all mixed up. That's crazy. I really apologize for that one. But if Dan Quinn wants to start to put together a defensive talent that can allow him to run his aggressive, man-heavy cover 2 scheme that he ran in Dallas the past 3 years that led the NFL in takeaways over the course of said 3 years, he can start with drafting a DJ James. Because right now, with the current personnel that the Commanders have, he would probably have to revert just a little bit, back to that very zone-heavy cover 3 scheme that he was running in Seattle with guys like Richard Sherman and things like that. If he were able to run to the exact defense that he's been running with the Cowboys, we would probably get carved up right now. So he can start by getting an elite pass rusher like Brian Burns or Josh Allen to fill in the Micah Parsons role that can get pressure constantly on the quarterback, which will allow him to play more man just off of that, just by itself. But then also you need to go and get a great cover corner like a DJ James. He's arguably one of the best pure cover corners in this draft with his high IQ and his elite athleticism, his mobility, his ability to like switch his hips. His hips are great, fluid, feet fluid, change of directions, quickness, short area quickness, all of that, great. But I'm pretty sure y'all are wondering, if he has all of that, then why would he even be available in the second round? Well, his main problem is that he's another lightweight corner like an Emmanuel Forbes, so that may scare a lot of y'all away from him. But also, Dan Quinn's scheme does a great job of protecting small frame corners from getting abused. So if there's any system that can make Emmanuel Forbes work, that can make a guy like DJ James work, it's Dan Quinn's system. Be a risk taker. Attack the ball. Don't worry about the fact that you're lightweight. We can work around that, especially with the constant pressure we're going to get on the quarterback with a great edge rusher to build around. Also, he can be a little too aggressive at times, get a little handsy. But when he's on, y'all. And again, at times this past season, he looked like the best cover corner in the draft and excels in both man and zone coverage, no matter what you want to do. So even if Dan Quinn shifts back to his Seattle zone coverage scheme, DJ James is still a good pick. If he wants to be able to just go ahead and run that man coverage thing that he was doing and be aggressive with the Cowboys, he's a great pick for that as well. He's able to convert really the Commanders roster into being able to run either schemes. Like, he's a good transition player no matter which one you want to do. If you're too afraid to run the Cowboy scheme, DJ James is good for that. But if you're ready to go ahead and say F it, let's go ahead and try it, he's good for that as well. So no matter what, through this transition of Dan Quinn taking over this Commanders defense and trying to make them into what he had for the Cowboys last year, DJ James can excel at no matter what you want to do. So I'm excited out of the way. I think DJ James will be a steal in the second round. Again, you got to hone some of that stuff in. And a lot of people, especially after the way Emmanuel Forbes played last year, a lot of people are going to be afraid to draft a guy like this, and he may slide to the second round. But if we're talking about just pure coverage ability, he's not a second round pick. He's a first round guy, maybe late first round guy. But hey, man, maybe there's a chance he'll make it there. Now, round 3, 67th overall, I was taking defensive back Tyke Smith from UGA, the Senior Bowl game defensive MVP for a reason. Tyke Smith was also Georgia's leader in tackles for loss, and interceptions in 2023. You don't put up stats like that if you're not just really good. The only reason he will make it this far in the draft is because he just won't test well. But if we're talking just pure college tape, that's it. You're just looking at the film. You're looking at what he did at the Senior Bowl against very similar competition as far as like level of competition and things like that. Everything is even. You're going against a bunch of seniors from around college football. No more you can hide because they were playing in a smaller division, lesser competition. This is the Senior Bowl. He was the defensive MVP for his team from the game for a reason. You could argue he has some of the best tape out of any defensive back in this entire draft. If we're only talking about tape only, he is an easy first rounder, but he's not going to blow people away with his combine testing results. He has all of this momentum from playing on a great Georgia defense, from being the Senior Bowl defensive MVP for his team. But when we get to his stock is just rising and rising right now. Everybody's talking about him. We get to that combine, he's not going to test well. His stock's probably going to drop a little bit, which will be good for the Commanders because that would allow us to potentially get him in the third round. He's not going to blow people away with his combine testing results, and that's going to lower his draft grades for a lot of teams. But let me tell you this now. This guy is always in the right place. Always. And yeah, being able to run a sub 4.40 time is nice and all, but you don't need to if you're so smart and watch so much film. You're just a super film junkie that you know what's going to happen before it even happens. So mentally, you're faster than everybody else. It doesn't matter if you're physically faster than everybody else or not, because you're always in the right guy. This man is the definition of the guy that just always seems to know the offensive play call that the offense is calling. I don't know how he does it. Sometimes it seems like he's cheating, but I mean, he's the definition of always in the right place. Remember Sean Lee, the linebacker for the Cowboys, slower than me, but he just always was able to predict what the offense was doing, so he was always a step or two ahead. It doesn't matter how slow you are if you're a step or two ahead. Tyke Smith is that, but literally faster, but just like in a DB's body. Some people may say he's just a pure slot corner and that's it. I think he can play some strong nickel. I think he can play some buffalo nickel. We call it the star position at Georgia, and I know a lot of y'all are trying to get rid of everything that was previous regime, so y'all don't even want to refer to the name buffalo nickel. Y'all don't even want to hear it. So from now on, as of today, we're going to call it the star, because that's what I prefer to call it anyway as a Georgia Bulldog fan. That buffalo nickel thing came out of nowhere with Ron Rivera, and I just had to get used to saying that. I'm more than ready, just like a lot of y'all, to erase that from my vocabulary. So I think he could play a lot of positions in the secondary. Honestly, I'm super excited about him. I'm telling you, man, this is the guy that just seems to know the play call better than any other defensive player on the field. You can tell he watches the most film. There's a reason he separated himself at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he was just making play after play. I'm telling y'all, just go watch the Senior Bowl and go watch why he won MVP. Again, there are guys out there with higher ceilings because of the athleticism, because they're faster, because they're quicker, because they're more explosive. But you can't help acknowledge the fact that this guy is going to help you win games no matter what you just draft him. Figure out what he'll play in your secondary exactly after that. If he's available 67th overall, you immediately go get him. He's so versatile. If you want a star position, if you want an extra safety on the field, if you want a guy that can play strong safety, if you need a slot corner, he can come in and fill that weakness immediately day one. He comes in with a very high floor. And again, I love that versatility. So no matter what weakness you may have in your secondary, other than outside corner and maybe free safety, because you probably need a little bit better speed for that, even though Justin Simmons doesn't have that, then this is your guy. He can fill it. So draft him, figure out where you want to put him, you figure the rest out later. But just know that you got yourself a playmaker that is going to do more film study than probably anybody else, and is also willing to hit. Like, I mean, hit. So again, he was Georgia's leaders in tackles for loss, and interceptions in 2023 for a reason. And I'm gonna let you know now, as a Georgia Bulldog fan, I'm sad to see him go. I'm happy for him. I'm very proud of him, but I am sick to see him leave our defense. And I would be more than ecstatic to see him go from my Georgia Bulldogs to my Commanders, because at the very least, I can continue to root for him going on into the future. Now, round 3, 100th overall, we again have 2 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks. Maybe we package some of those together to move up to get Troy Fautanu in the late first round. We'll see. But either way, round 3, 100th overall, I have us taking offensive tackle Dominic Pooney. And just to go ahead and let you know, yeah, we already took Troy Fautanu, but Dominique from Kansas, this guy can play anywhere you need him on the offensive line. And I know a lot of y'all are trying to get away from this positional flex and all of that type of stuff. That's another word we're trying to get rid of. But this guy can actually play every position on the offensive line. He's not a jack of all trades. And he was a big-time Senior Bowl standout. Anybody that watched the practices and watched the games know that this guy was one of the most talked about guys from the Senior Bowl. He raised his stock mightily. He may not even be available in the third round by the time the draft comes around, but I like him. He played left tackle for Kansas this entire past season. Very underrated there if you want to play him at tackle. If you want to just go ahead and go Troy Fautanu left tackle and Dominique at right tackle, I'm perfectly fine with that. I think he's that good. But then he went to the Senior Bowl and excelled at center. He played a lot of guard before. He played guard in 2022, tackle in 2023. But he went to the Senior Bowl and looked like one of the best centers out there, arguably the best center out there. He was fantastic at it. And that was his first time ever playing center from what I believe. So that was crazy. He had great balance. He had great hand usage. He picked up stunts very well, showing his high IQ. And he also did a good job of getting to the second level to take linebackers out of plays. And a lot of people feel like he was honestly one of the week's MVPs at the Senior Bowls. And with us needing to add athleticism everywhere on the offensive line, basically except for right guard, because we already have Samuel Cosme, who's a freak athlete. And then maybe you can say left guard between Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul, whoever ends up winning that battle, because it's an open battle right now. And maybe even Dominique comes in and competes at left guard, whatever. But either way, no matter where you need an offensive lineman, you draft him just like Tyke Smith, and you figure it out later. Now, I don't want us to do how we did Samuel Cosme 2 years ago, where you flip-flop them back and forth. You draft them, and then after that, you figure out where you want to put him in practice. You get a look at him in practice. You feel like he's best at tackle, or he's best at guard, or he's best at center, whatever. And then you keep him as that for hopefully the remainder of his career. Yeah, he's versatile. If there's an injury, maybe you plug him in somewhere, but you groom him to be elite at one thing. Just go ahead and don't do the Samuel Cosme flip-flopping back and forth. But again, he's a can't-miss guy in the third round. He comes with such a high floor. And then again, in the air raid system that needs as many good offensive linemen as possible, this is a guy you can't pass up if he's available there in the third round. Especially our second third-round pick that's a deep, late compensatory pick. I think it's the latest compensatory pick possible in the third round. It's basically like a free pick, it feels like, even though we traded away Chase Young to get this pick. And I would be more than happy to trade Chase Young for a Dominique. I'm that high on him. Then round 4, 102nd overall. This is a different round, but only 2 picks later. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. You know, I live stream the drafts and everything like that. To be able to pick 100th overall and then to come back and pick 102nd overall is cool, because like at the end of round 3, which is day 2, we'll have the final pick of the draft. We'll be streaming all night. And then immediately round 4, the next day, the next morning, we're going to be picking immediately in that day. So that's really cool. Round 4, 102nd overall, tight end Cade Stover, Ohio State. Again, you see me draft him over and over again. I don't care. He's that good. And how he could potentially fit this air raid system as well. Now that we brought in Cliff Kingsbury, my Cade Stover stock is even higher now. We need tight end. Plain and simple. And I'm going to keep drafting him out of hope of basically speaking it into existence. And again, this guy literally looks like the next Sam Laporta to me. He's literally just a little bit bigger and a little bit faster. I'm not going to spend too much time breaking him down, because I've already mock drafted him to the Commanders like 2 or 3 times already before. But long story short, a true dual threat tight end. And with this air raid system that doesn't prioritize tight ends, because Cliff Kingsbury is going to want to throw as much as possible, and a lot of the runs that we do will just be out of shotgun anyway with 4 wide receivers on the field, we still need a tight end with receiving potential. We still need a dual threat tight end. Eugene Shen is definitely going to emphasize that, because he said dual threat tight end is arguably the most underrated talent trait position in the NFL. And so he's going to emphasize that on his end. Adam Peters, I'm sure, is going to hear him out, especially with the fact that he's had George Kittle, and he's the one that drafted George Kittle, and how great he's been for the 49ers. Adam Peters is going to probably be pounding the table to get a dual threat tight end in here as well. And this is your guy. And we need a tight end that will be so much of a receiving threat that it just forces Cliff Kingsbury to keep him on the field as much as possible. Even as much as he likes to run 4 wide receiver sets, will run running back and no tight ends more than anybody else in the NFL. That doesn't mean that we still don't need tight end. It doesn't mean that tight ends go extinct in this offense. And again, if you're a receiving tight end, that means, if anything, you're going to be open more and get the ball more than normal tight ends do. You may be on the field less often, but you're going to probably actually get more targets and be more open, because teams are going to be so worried about the running back out of the backfield and those other fast receivers spreading the defense open. You're going to be open underneath a lot, and you probably have a better statistical season under Cliff Kingsbury. Because think about it, Zach Ertz, man, when he went there, Cliff Kingsbury did a great job of getting Zach Ertz from Philadelphia to the Cardinals and maximizing him for at least 1 season. Because immediately the season after he got Zach Ertz, that very first season that he had him, Zach Ertz had 74 receptions, 763 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. His first year under Cliff Kingsbury. So I'm telling you, man, Cade Stover could literally be that for us. I like Cole Turner. I do. And I feel like he was underutilized this past season severely. So I think there's some talent there we could tap into. And of course, I'm a big Armani Rogers fan, especially with his crazy athleticism and ceiling, if he can come back healthy. But we still need tight end pretty bad even with those guys. A lot of those guys are still question marks. And we may even sign somebody in free agency like a Dalton Schultz. It may be that serious, especially since I think Logan Thomas is a strong cut candidate to save cap space right now. You never know. Maybe he sticks around. Maybe Cliff Kingsbury falls in love with him. But I think Cade Stover will be a home run pick in the 4th round, plain and simple. Again, to me, literally the next Sam Laporta, just a little bit bigger and a little bit faster. And if Ben Johnson can get that out of Sam Laporta, why wouldn't Cliff Kingsbury be able to get that out of him after what he did with Zach Ertz? And then round 5, pick 137th overall, Levis taking edge Muhammad Kamara from Colorado State. And boy, we need edge rushers bad, man. I like KJ Henry's potential, but man, if we don't at least get Brian Burns or Josh Allen, I would be pretty surprised with how bad we need edge rusher right now. Honestly, our biggest need. I know we need tackle, and I know a lot of us are ready to move on from the Charles Leno and Andrew Wiley thing, but they were at least all right. Right now, we don't even have bodies in the edge rusher room. Nobody's on contract. We traded away Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I've already talked about this in several videos and live streams. We already traded away our top edge rushers. Then your next starters, but after they were gone, are Casey Toohill and Jay Smith-Williams. Neither of them are on contract. FL Bada, not on contract and on IR as well. We literally don't have edge rushers on the roster. We don't even have bodies to throw out there. We're not even talking about talent, like we don't have enough good bodies. We just don't have enough bodies, period. So we're gonna have to go edge rusher and free agency. We need to go sell out to get one of those guys between Brian Burns and Josh Allen. But that's not enough. You still, even after getting one of those guys, still needs to draft a guy like this. I completely expect them to go edge rusher somewhere in the middle of the draft or earlier than what people expect. Because Adam Peters always had a top tier pass rusher with Von Miller on the Broncos, Nick Bosa on the 49ers. And again, this is a Dan Quinn draft. He's used to having Micah Parsons the last 3 years, which is why he was allowed to run the defense that he was running there, being as aggressive as he was and leading the NFL in takeaways over the past 3 seasons. And Muhammad Kamara is literally Shaq Barrett. Like literally same school, just about the same frame, same size and all of that. And Shaq Barrett went undrafted. But I highly doubt Kamara goes undrafted. Just to go ahead and let you know now. People always need edge rushers, and I doubt all 32 NFL teams make the same mistake again, letting a Shaq Barrett clone go undrafted again. And somebody is going to want to not even just take that chance, man. With these guys that come with pass rush skills, I just can't see them letting them just keep slipping in the draft round after round after round and allow the potential of another team taking them. He had 28 sacks over the past 3 seasons while rushing from several different alignments. It could be from the edge, 5 tech, 3 tech, whatever. Like sometimes they would get creative and rush him inside. And no matter what he was able to produce, it didn't matter where from. And in this past season alone, in 12 games, not 17 because this is college, not the NFL. These are 12 games. 56 total tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, 1 pass defense, 1 forced fumble, 1 touchdown, and 2 forced fumbles. And he also doesn't have any major injuries in his history, which is also a big plus. Literally his only problem is the lower level of competition. I really wish he could have been invited to the Senior Bowl, but at least he did really well at the East-West Shrine Bowl to stick out. But maybe not a lot of people hold that in high regard. And again, with him being a Shaq Barrett clone that went undrafted, I think the perfect middle is him potentially going in the 5th round where we could end up getting him. Then round 6, pick 180th overall, I've taken Aniyah Smith, wide receiver from Texas A&M. And in the air raid system, and especially with us only having 4 wide receivers currently on roster who at least caught 1 pass for us last season, even after potentially re-signing Curtis Samuel, which will put us at 5, we still need more receivers. We still need receivers bad. Again, Cliff Kingsbury's offense, like I've explained in other videos, has 4 receivers on the field at the same time more than any other offense in the NFL. And with only 5, even if we re-sign Curtis Samuel currently on roster that contributed anything to us last year, we are still lacking. Like, we need to carry more wide receivers on our 53-man roster now than we probably ever have, at least in my lifetime of being a Burgundy and Gold fan. Like, if there were ever a year to have 8 receivers to make the 53-man roster, it is this offense, is this system, it is this organization right here. This 2024 Commanders, man, we need them as much as possible. So we're probably going to go receiver crazy in both free agency and the draft. Maybe no splash signings, and maybe not even necessarily a bargain bin signing, but a guy like somewhere in the middle that's really good, decent, ready to contribute immediately. But we just need bodies, man. We just need receivers, just like we just literally need edge rushers to fill out the roster. Good or bad, we just need edge rushers. Same thing with receivers, man. We need some guys. Especially, we really need some guys that allows us to take deep shots deep down the field, that can take the lid off of defenses. We need receivers that can consistently take the lid off of the defenses and force defenses to lighten up the box and make it easier to run the ball against those light boxes. So I'm telling you, man, Aniyah Smith is literally your guy. He's pretty short, 5'9", 191 pounds, so he's built pretty big for a guy that's 5'9", to be honest, but he's projected to run a 4.41 40 time, and we need all of the speed that we can get on this roster. And when you watch watch him, he reminds me a lot of Sky Moore coming out of college, to be completely honest with you. The reason he would be available this late is literally just because he needs to learn how to attack the ball with his hands more often. He's more of like a body catcher sometimes. He allows it to come hit his chest and his body. Also, he's not a great contested catch guy, especially with him being so small. So you would hope for him to learn how to be a better route runner and ability to separate underneath right now. So I wouldn't say he's a one-trick pony, but he's not the best at getting open underneath. He's literally more so, if anything, just a deep shot guy, or a guy you give the ball out of the backfield and just allow him to make plays in the open space and make guys miss, do things like that, like sweeps and reverses and stuff like that. But right now, he's pretty scheme dependent. And what scheme could maximize his talent today before he grooms into a better, more nuanced receiver that can learn better route running, that can learn how to catch better? It's this scheme. If there's any scheme in the NFL that can get productivity out of him immediately, day one, it is this one. So this will be a match made in heaven, because he would be excited to be in an offense like this that will maximize his raw skills right now, because he's still pretty raw, and we would be excited to have a guy with that much athleticism and that high of a ceiling this late in the draft. And that's also very possible, because when I'm doing these picks, I'm also looking at where other recruiting organizations, draft analysts like Pro Football Network, Pro Football Focus, and Draft Buzz, and all of these different sites, ESPN, when you look at their big boards, Bleacher Report, like on average, where are these guys going in the draft? And this guy was getting taken somewhere, I believe, like between the 150s and the 200s. So I feel like 180th overall makes a lot of sense. And that kind of, I should have said that, I should have prefaced that at the beginning of this video, but that goes with the logic for the majority of these picks. This is in range of where a lot of mock drafts and draft big boards have these guys going. So I'm not just completely reaching for a guy, say in the 6th round, that's projected to go in like the 4th or the 3rd, or even necessarily the 5th. So just to keep that in mind. And then the last pick of the draft, round 7, 219th overall, is taking running back Blake Watson from Memphis. And he's one of the best receiving backs in this draft from what I've watched so far. Now, of course, I should have also prefaced this at the beginning of this mock draft. I still have a lot more film to watch. Again, I'm a little bit behind the 8-ball just because as a Georgia Bulldog fan, I've been watching so much recruiting stuff, so much high school tape. I've been watching guys, of course, from the 2024 class, but a lot of the 2025 high school recruiting class, and I've already started to dive into the 2026. But as of like the past month, I've been heavy into film watching, but it's not only a month for you to be able to watch everybody. So I'm still catching up right now. But so far from what I've watched, and again, I have a lot more film to watch, I have a lot more players to watch, but so far, honestly, my boy Bucky Irvin from Oregon is probably the best receiving back in this draft from what I've seen so far. But as far as no chance of getting him in the 7th round, your next best thing is potentially a Blake Watson. He's also up there with his receiving back ability. He's perfect for Cliff Kingsbury air raid system that loves sending running backs out on routes out of the backfield rather than keeping them back there to protect, which is again emphasizes why our offensive line has to be amazing, because they're on islands, y'all. The running back isn't back there to protect. Tight ends aren't on the field as much as other offenses. It's just a bunch of receivers and a running back basically acting as a 5th receiver, and then you just have 5 offensive linemen out there just completely on an island basically. So I just want to emphasize that again as to why offensive line is we have to upgrade offensive line talent just to even be able to be functional with this offensive line. Like that has to happen. But receiving back wise, to go back to my original point, Blake is actually good enough to even line up as a slot receiver if you want him to. He seems very J.D. McKissick-like, great natural hands, doesn't look like he struggles to catch the ball as a running back. Like even Antonio Gibson, as much as I love him, sometimes you know how he bobbles it before he catches it? No, this guy just catches it. He looks like a receiver sometimes. And then his screen game decision-making and vision and ability to set up blocks to maximize every little bit of yardage that he can get is amazing as well. This is the type of guy that you give him a screen, he's going to get more yards than you expect just because he's so smart with it. It's not just athleticism, it's also IQ, awareness, and vision when it comes to screens as to why some guys are just better than others, even if the other guy is faster. And that takes me also to like one of his weaknesses. It's the speed. That's the only reason he would probably, his lack of size and the fact that he's going to be that small and not be like a 4-3 guy is probably why he's going to be available this late. But we'll get there. We're going to get that pretty soon. But his ability to make people miss out in space is going to, of course, excite Cliff Kingsbury, but also Dan Quinn, because Dan Quinn, again, said in his press conference that he really wants to focus on explosive plays in that initial press conference yesterday on both offense and defense, because on the defensive side of the ball, he says he wants to do everything to generate destructive plays. I forgot how Kirby Smart of my Georgia Bulldogs worded it, but basically plays like sacks, forced fumbles, interceptions, pick sixes. Like, he wants to emphasize that we're not going to be conservative or anything like that. We're diving in. We're being aggressive. We're going to create momentum and energy. We're going to celebrate after plays because we're going to generate big moments. And then the same thing goes for offense. They want to create chunk plays. They want to, instead of like little 5-yard dinking and dunking, they want to go for 80-yard bombs. They want to go for 40-yard chunk runs and things like that. That's the type of stuff that they want to do, and Blake Watson can help you do that. Again, literally like a J.D. McKissick, in my opinion. And this guy has a knack for turning a 5-yard gain into a 12+ with his ability to make people miss. And Dan Quinn and this entire team will feed off of those explosive plays and that energy, and it's going to carry over to not only the rest of the offense, but the defense, the special teams. Everybody's going to feed off of that passion, that momentum, turning a 5-yard run by the way it's set up, by the defense reading it, and his ability to make people miss and turn it into 12. How hype everybody's going to be on the sideline, how hype everybody is going to be on the field. Dan Quinn yelling, Cliff Kingsbury showing passion, no more of the Ron Rivera just arm fold chilling. Like, that's going to carry over, man. That's going to be infectious. That's going to be contagious on this team. And again, that's what Dan Quinn's like main thing is. We need a lot of that on defense and offense. Blake Watson gives you that. And again, he's a great fit for Cliff Kingsbury's scheme. Air raid system has your running backs out there running routes probably more than they actually run the ball. And this guy can catch, man. He can make guys miss out of the backfield. Even if you give it to him out of the backfield on like a wheel route, he just goes out. He didn't even have to run like a real receiver route vertically. He could just go horizontally in the backfield. You give it to him, he's going to make some guys miss and get yardage out of that as well. So I'm super excited. He's definitely potentially like a fire starter that's going to get a whole fuel and flame going, and everybody else is going to make it even bigger, and then we're just going to have this huge fire of a team, and we're just running off this momentum. I'm super excited about that. He can literally be like the catalyst for like a big jolt of energy for the entire team, and that's exactly what Dan Quinn is looking for. But the reason, again, that he would even be available this late in the draft would definitely be because even though he does make big plays, he's not going to test very well from what I've seen. He's estimated to run somewhere in the 4.5s, and that's not great, and that's crazy for a third down back especially. But I'm also worried about the fact that, again, even though he makes big plays and he makes people miss, he's not a home run threat with that lack of speed. And let me put it like this, basically. The reason Blake Watson will go potentially in the 7th round, which again, a lot of big boards have him going, Antonio Gibson is at least 3 inches taller, minimum. He's 38 pounds heavier, and yet he ran a 4.39. This guy, again, is going to potentially run in the 4.5s. So Antonio Gibson, those stats I just gave you, those measurables, those tangibles are why he ended up getting drafted in the 3rd round. It was pure just traits and freakish athleticism. Blake is shorter, way lighter by almost 40 pounds, and also still at the same time slower. But if Blake Watson is available with our last pick, please go get him and give him a chance to prove what he can do. Cliff Kingsbury would definitely be able to maximize his strengths and hide the fact that he's so small, because you're not going to be sitting here getting tackled by linebackers all day. They're going to be so spread wide open. We're going to be attacking people. We're going to utilize the entire 80 yards in the field. That's what I'm so excited about with Cliff Kingsbury's offense. And so the box is going to be light. So this guy isn't going to have to worry about 2-3 linebackers and a bunch of defensive linemen chasing after him. At most, it'll probably be his one linebacker probably staying back to spy Jayden Daniels. And then now you got to worry about going to catch Blake Watson out of the backfield. And you're going to have at least like 5 yards of space before any defensive player is even able to touch you. So a guy like that can completely be utilized perfectly in an offense like this. A match made in heaven again. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm the like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated videos just like this one. And of course, man, let me know how you feel about this mock draft, whether you agree or disagree, if you liked it, if you loved it, if you hated it. I want all opinions. And again, I've been super busy, but I try my best to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. I'm sorry if I missed a lot of y'all comments, but let me know how you feel about everything. I may just take some hours, set aside some time to try to reply to as many comments as possible like I did like a week ago. So just stay patient with me. But again, let me know how you feel about this mock draft. Of course, also do your own Dan Quinn themed mock draft. How do you feel like Dan Quinn would prefer a mock draft to go? Make your own decisions. Trade back, trade up, to the #1 overall pick if you want to. Just give me your example mock drafts, and also if you can, give me your opinions of mine. Again, even if you hate it, I want to know why, because maybe you bring up a great point that I overlooked, that I didn't think about. That is like, oh yeah, you're right. Maybe we shouldn't draft that guy. Maybe we should draft this guy instead. Let me know all of that. And again, stay tuned because I have so many video ideas that I'm working on right now. So stay tuned for all of it. I really appreciate y'all, and I'm gonna keep y'all updated on everything that we got going on, no matter how small or big. Because again, we still have to hire positional coaches. Y'all know we still gotta hire like a tight ends coach, a receivers coach, QB's coach, all of that type of stuff, secondaries coach. I'm gonna keep y'all updated on all of that. So stay tuned. Another mock draft is on the way as well, a Cliff Kingsbury focused mock draft. So stay tuned for that. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.